Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to my channel Touchstone. I'm Sage, and today I want to talk to you guys about the different ways in which we look out for ourselves. Now, as you probably saw in the title, I'm going to be talking a bit about selfishness, and I want to expose what I believe to be the truth about selfishness itself. Now, there are two extreme approaches to this, and in my opinion, they're both wrong. Among those in the first place who are among the pious, the traditional, the stoic, they have a tendency to imply that any focus on yourself is in and of itself a bad thing. And I think that that is plain wrong. You may remember from a previous video we were talking about the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself. And I'll put a link for that in the description as well as a card up here. But anyway, the truth about it is that in order to truly live out the golden rule, you need to be able to love your neighbor as yourself. So you need to love yourself and your neighbor, and they grow together. Now, on the opposite side of this, we have those who are among the those who want to self-actualize. You know, they're looking out for number one, right? In most cases, they're trying to go for what will make them, what they think will make them happy, what will express their true selves. And what they don't realize is that there's a difference between what we want and what we will. You know, there's making choices and they're simply responding to desire. And by doing this, by trying to simply self-actualize, what they really are doing is they're putting their desire over their will, and they're turning more into like animals who are just following their baser instincts. If you want to put it another way, by putting desire over will, your desires, your simple wants and cravings become your puppeteer, and you yourself are the marionette.
Ooh, Elmo says yum, yum.
What it really turns out to be in the end is just another form of bondage. Now, in order to understand this a little bit further, I want to go into the difference between what is self-obsession and what is what I call self-care. When we are self-obsessed, when we're just trying to look out for number one and we're just going for what we think will make us happy, the fact of the matter is we're looking from our own perspective, right? We're not looking at ourselves, we're looking from ourselves. And as such, when we're not really looking at ourselves, we're not seeing ourselves objectively, and therefore we're not really getting a fair glimpse of who we are from our own perspective. Now, to get a really good feel for the difference here, let me just ask a simple question. Consider some of your best friends, right? And let's say that one of them is getting, for example, into a relationship that you know is bad. You know this other person is going to be terrible for them, or at least you have a very strong concern about it. You know, you are genuinely worried. If you really care about that other person enough, if you really care about your friend, you're going to be putting your own friendship at risk, and what you're going to be doing is probably bringing them advice that, again, you know, could end up severing the friendship itself. But what you're going to be telling them to do is not to go for their desires. You're not going to be telling them to self-actualize. What you're going to be telling them is to do that which you believe is for their good, right? Now, ask yourself a very important question. Once you've got this idea down, right, and you can think of any other example of similar things, ask yourself this simple question. Do you do the same for you? And I think once we have a clear picture of this in our minds, well, we're going to notice that there is a difference between the way that we care for ourselves and the way we care for other people. And if you realize that, and once again going back to the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself, if love your neighbor as yourself really is that pivotal, then the fact that we care differently for ourselves than we do for others is exposed as an imbalance. It's really quite wrong, correct? So consider the alternative. Start taking your viewpoint out of simply your own perspective and start looking at yourself as if you were on the outside, as objectively as you can. I like to call this outrospection, right? We have the idea of introspection, looking within yourself. But then what if you were to take your own point of view and judge your life, judge your everyday, judge your attitudes, judge your selfishness? You are using what, again, outrospection, and starting to judge yourself more and more objectively. And the practical result of it is something more like parenting yourself, if you will, right? And in a similar way as it would be with the other person, again, you know, you may be taking a risk for your own friendship in those cases, and when you're doing that, you're being very selfless. Well, you turn that same idea on yourself, and it's almost as if you're being selfless towards yourself, which I think puts, if people can really get a handle on that, I think that puts a very good argument against those who are among the more pious and stoic and think that any focus on yourself is a bad thing. So in the end, the main difference that we have is that we become self-governing. We take the desire over the will and flip it and put it will over desire. Now, that does not mean that we're simply going to start saying no in every case to desire. That is not how it goes. That's what happens when desire is over will, right? Desire dominates will, and pretty much any time desire comes up, it tries to force will wherever it wishes it to go. But when will is over desire, what happens is it basically tells it where it gets off, right? So there's going to be cases where it's obvious once you have made this change that, hey, it's like, give into that desire. It is a healthy and wonderful thing, and go for it, right? But then there's going to be other times where, no, this is going to be a disadvantage. This is bad for you. This is going to damage you, or maybe your friendships, your likability, and so on. So don't do it, and you simply become more self-governing. And what you are doing in that case is you are beginning to look out for your own ultimate good. So now, once we've gotten to this point, I think we can start exposing what really is the truth about selfishness. Because those of us who have had a bad past, those of us who have made some mistakes and are still kind of under the weight of those things, when we really start asking the question, just consider me to be asking you this question right now: do you care about your own good? And I think in many cases, when people face that question, the response, whether it be internal or external, is going to be something like, oh, but I'm just too messed up. I've made too many mistakes. I'm too damaged. I can't possibly start actually trying to fix myself and become a better person and look out for my own good. Now, take a look at that in context, right? Take that reaction. If that is your reaction, or if that's a reaction that you see out there, but it's more important that you be judging yourself in this case, take a look at those words. What are you really saying when you are saying, I'm not good enough? You're hating yourself, right? And that may sound very shocking, but it's a lot more common than you might think. So we have to face this. And if this is true, then it exposes what selfishness in part is. Its foundation is not in looking out for number one. It's actually in self-hatred. You, perhaps at the very beginning, though you may not have realized it, said something like, oh, you know what, it's bunk anyway, I'm just going to stop caring and I'm going to look out for number one and I'm going to try to live for myself. It is actually founded in a apathy towards yourself, which is really hatred towards you, towards your own soul. So again, just take a look at this in the whole context, right? If the foundation of selfishness, if your first choices of selfishness were always an apathy and a hatred towards yourself, and the practical results of being selfish are things like, losing likability with other people, damaging yourself, giving into what really is actually bad for you, then the truth about selfishness is that it is self-loathing. So that's all I had to talk about today. I hope you found it quite edifying and enlightening, and I will see you guys next time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like. If you'd like to see more of this material, please subscribe, and you can always suggest new ideas for material in the comments. This is a very new channel, and I plan to be doing one new video per week.